The Earth's 23-degree axis puts the Sun on all of the Earth at the exact correct distance and prevents over-icing and overheating. Its 93 million mile distance from Earth to the Sun is just right to keep us from burning up or from freezing. In fact, life could not exist on Earth if the Sun were between 2 and 4% further from us or between 2 and 4% closer to us. The Sun continually turns hydrogen into helium through the process of fusion, converting 4 million tons of matter into energy every second. Astronomers consider that the Sun is an average star in mass, size, and brightness. When we burn wood or coal, we're actually releasing stored energy from the Sun. Most all of our heat is produced by the Sun with a core temperature of 27 million degrees and a surface temperature of 10,000 degrees. And yet we only get about 1/2 billionth of its energy due to the 93 million mile distance away from us. The Sun is 1.5 million times larger than the Earth, and there are 30 billion suns in the Milky Way galaxy, and it's shaped like a thin watch with a diameter of 200,000 light years. In fact, there are at least 100,000 Milky Way-sized galaxies, with some of them millions of light years apart, and the next closest galaxy is 160,000 light years away. The closest star beyond the Sun is over 25 trillion miles away, and yet the Sun is only a medium-sized star in the Milky Way galaxy. I and millions of others say that the Sun demands that it has a creator. Again, to consider the vastness of creation, to get across just the Milky Way galaxy at the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, or 6 trillion miles a year, it would take 125,000 years. It would take 800,000 years at the speed of light just to get to the next closest galaxy, and there are at least 100,000 galaxies. If you could take a picture of our galaxy like the one you see here, in order to see Earth, you would have to blow up the picture to the size of the continent of Asia and have the most powerful microscope ever invented. Again, I think this screams of a creator. Let's consider the complexity of clouds. Clouds are water vapor that is bonded with salt from ocean water, which is undrinkable to us, but which we get back in the form of rain. This water vapor is lifted thousands of feet in the air against gravity that at higher altitudes and lower pressures condense onto microscopic particles of dust and salt. The water droplets combined at about 1,000 drops per cubic inch to form clouds, and in higher elevations, ice crystals along with the water vapor. The water vapor stays in the cloud until it is large and heavy enough to fall down as rain. When you consider the weight of water compared to air, it is astonishing that enormous quantities of water are raised from the oceans and lakes every hour by evaporation and lifted thousands of feet in the air, where they remain suspended for long periods and then give us the rain that we need. 1 drop of rain is equal to 8 million droplets of water wrapped around a particle of dust. A rain of 4 inches over a 10,000 square mile area would require burning 640 million tons of coal to evaporate water for such a rain, and yet God does it without any of that energy. An average farmer in Minnesota, for free, gets 407,510 gallons of water per acre per year with a 24-inch annual rainfall. Missouri gets enough water each year to fill a lake 22 feet deep by 60 miles wide and 250 miles long. 1 teaspoon of water contains 1 million billion trillion atoms. You have to know that there's power and intelligence in the world. Lightning hits the Earth 100 times every second, with 8.6 million strikes per day and over 3 billion every year, and yet each strike occurs in the blink of an eye. A single bolt of lightning can heat the surrounding air from 15,000 to 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is up to 5 times the surface temperature of the sun. An average bolt of lightning packs a wallop of several hundred million volts with peak currents of up to 20,000 amps. And the thousands of lightning strikes that are occurring around the world produce 100 million tons of nitrogen plant food, without which we would not be able to exist on this planet. With 50% of the Earth covered with clouds, we get the right amount of sun, and the ultraviolet rays are allowed in to kill algae, but the 8 killer rays that are harmful to us are not allowed in due to the clouds in combination with the ozone. Our atmosphere is unique in all of the known universe, with 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% trace elements. The nitrogen and oxygen and trace elements that are in our atmosphere are all mechanically mixed by tidal effects of the moon in order to always give us the same amount of oxygen in order for us to live on. Air actually has no color, and yet the most spectacular colors in nature are seen in the sky. It is because water droplets and impurities act as tiny mirrors and prisms and sponges to reflect and refract and absorb different wavelengths of sunlight. The visible spectrum contains millions of colors. At sunrise and sunset, the oblique rays of the sun travel through more of the Earth's atmosphere, and the shorter blue wavelengths of the spectrum are absorbed. The result is red, yellow, and orange clouds. When the sun is more perpendicular to the Earth, the red wavelengths are absorbed, and the sky appears blue. There is no blue sky 17 miles above the atmosphere where there is no dust. And again, all of this demands a creator. There are 5 billion birds in America alone. Some can fly for over 500 miles. Mallards can fly at 60 miles an hour. Eagles, like the one in the picture, can fly at 100 miles an hour. And peregrine falcons can fly at over 200 miles an hour. There are birds that navigate by the stars even if they're born in isolation. And how could they do that without a creator? A bombardier beetle has a chemical that mixes and explodes in the enemy's face at exactly the right time without hurting the beetle. Who do you think made that happen? Let's consider the minuteness of creation. Atoms, as in atom bomb, are indivisible. It takes 3 atoms to equal 1 water molecule, and there are enough molecules in 1 drop of water that if each one was blown up to the size of a grain of sand, it would be 1 foot thick, 1/2 mile wide, and it would extend from Los Angeles to New York. Actually, atoms are made up of mostly empty space. The materials that make up an atom take up only 1/trillionth of an atom's volume of space. When atoms join, they join at their outer electron orbit. And what makes things seem solid are the motions within the atoms. Everything, that's right, everything, is mostly empty space. If the average person had all of the space squeezed out of him, the volume would be 1/100 millionth of an inch, and you would be lost on the head of a pin. We are all basically nothing. In our case for creation, let's look at the incredible facts of the human body that show the evidence for a creator. We humans consist of between 30 and 100 trillion cells. We have red blood cells shaped like lightsabers that carry oxygen to the other cells. Then there are the white cells that do the healing. They run to the injury point and blanket the bacterial spheres, destroying them with a granular chemical explosive. The white cell then often dies. We have about 50 billion running around us at any time with a backup force of 5,000 billion in our bone marrow. We wash off 5 million bacteria each time we wash our hands. Chemically, our cells are almost alike, but visually and functionally, they are as different as animals in a zoo. Muscle cells are sleek, supple, and full of coiled energy. Cartilage cells are shiny black and glued together for strength. Fat cells are lazy and look like bulging white garbage bags jammed together. Bone cells live in rigid structures for strength. Skin cells form patterns of softness and texture that rise and dip, giving shape and beauty to our bodies. And the king of cells is the nerve cell, which is spider-like with axons or wires carrying messages to and from the brain. The key to human worth and the difference is that our cells, taking turns, divide up the labor, limiting the responses to a single task. You will grow the equivalent of an entire new skeleton approximately every 7 years. The skeleton is an efficient factory which produces red blood cells from the bone marrow of certain bones and white cells from the marrow of other bones to destroy the harmful bacteria. The bones are also a storehouse for minerals such as calcium. Babies are born with 270 soft bones, about 64 more than an adult, which will fuse together by the age of between 20 and 25 into the 206 hard, permanent bones. Thigh bones are usually stronger pound for pound than reinforced steel. Consider the human eye. The eyes we see this picture with consist of 107 million cells, 7 million cone cells, which give us the full band of color and the ability to detect 10 million different colors and transmit 1.5 million messages to the brain simultaneously. The other 100 million cells are for low light or night vision. Each cell triggers an electrical response to the brain, which sorts out and gives us an image. Scientists have discovered that while the image that we receive in our eye is upside down, the cellular structure in our eye actually reverses the image to right side up within the eye before sending it to the mind. This corrected image is then transmitted by the eye at 300 miles an hour to the brain, where we see the image that is before us. The eye is furnished with automatic aiming, automatic focusing, and automatic aperture adjustment, and can focus in environments from almost complete darkness to bright sunlight. The eye muscle is the fastest reacting muscle in the entire body and can contract in less than 1/100th of a second. The eye consists of a ball with a lens on one side and a light-sensitive retina made up of rods and cones inside the other. The lens itself has a sturdy protective covering called a cornea and sits over an iris designed to protect the eye from excessive light. The eye contains a fantastic watery substance that is replaced every 4 hours, while tear glands continuously flush the outside clean. In addition, an eyelid sweeps secretion over the cornea to keep it moist, and eyelashes protect it from dust. As you look at this picture, a number of impulses are traveling through your eyes through millions of nerve fibers that transmit information to a complex computer center in the brain called a visual cortex. Now let's look at the power and the complexity of the human heart. Your heart will beat more than 2.5 billion times in an average lifetime, or 100,000 times a day. It will pump 300 quarts of blood every hour, or 1,800 gallons of blood per day. It does enough work in 12 hours to lift 65 tons off the ground, and it moves your entire blood supply through your entire body in 26 seconds. A single drop of blood has 35,000 red blood cells, and one single red blood cell contains 280 million hemoglobin molecules. Now that's the most important protein molecule in blood. And in each one of those 280 million hemoglobin molecules, there are 10,000 atoms and 574 amino acid links. The amazing thing is that your body makes 2 million red blood cells every second, and that equals about 173 billion a day. I say the evidence demands that there's a designer and a creator for the human heart. Now let's take a look at our sense of touch and of feeling. There are 450 touch cells per 1 square inch of skin. We can discern 1/1000th of an inch of pressure on the tip of a half-inch hair. And the amount of pressure that it takes before a blindfold person becomes aware of being touched by an object is measured in a scale that's called the absolute threshold of touch. Now the top of your tongue is sensitive to only 2 milligrams of pressure. Your fingers are sensitive to only 3 milligrams of pressure. The sole of your foot to 250 milligrams of pressure. Now on the other side, the absolute threshold of pain is the amount of pressure needed to be applied to a very sharp pin before pain is felt. The cornea of your eye can only take 0.2 of a single milligram of pressure before pain is felt. But the sole of your foot can take 200 milligrams before it feels pain, and the fingertip takes 300 milligrams in order to feel pain. Now note that the fingertip can sense as little as 3 milligrams of pressure, but it takes 300 milligrams to feel pain. The concert violinist, like the one you see in the picture, has to sense a great range of pressures to produce perfect sound and volume. Those same fingers have to be tough to be a carpenter, like the one you see in the picture, or a tennis player. If the brain sensed pain every time you pounded a hammer or squeezed a tennis racket, life would be miserable. The cornea of the eye has a limited blood supply and is very fragile, so a very small piece of wood or dirt represents a serious threat. The cornea has an electric hotline to the brain, so to speak. And yet, in all of this, with anesthesia, you can burn the stomach or cut the brain or whatever you want to do and not feel pain. So we are wonderfully made. The human brain is the most complex organ in the known universe. It weighs less than 3 pounds and can fit into a quart jar. It contains more than 30 billion special cells known as neurons, through which the brain's commands are sent in the form of electrical pulses. These pulses travel at more than 250 miles an hour, creating enough electricity to power a light bulb. It also has another 250 billion glial cells that facilitate communication between neurons. Dendrites carry impulses to the cells, and axons carry impulses away from the cells. Your brain has 100,000 billion electrical connections, more than all the electrical appliances in the world, yet operates for 70 to 80 years on 10 watts of power. The human brain consumes more energy than any other organ, burning up a whopping 1/5 or 20% of the food that we take in. It does what a computer the size of the Empire State Building cannot do. Such a computer would require roughly the same power generated by Niagara Falls to operate. It is estimated that the mental capacity of a 100-year-old human with near-perfect memory could be represented by a computer with 10 to the power of 15 bits, or 1 petabit. At the current rate of computer chip development, that figure can be reached in about 35 years from now. However, that represents just memory capacity, not the extremely complex processes of thought creation and emotions. As all of this information should amaze you, as it amazes me, please know that the brain stops growing when you're about 15 years old. In 1931, 2 German scientists named Max Nott and Ernst Ruska invented something called an electron microscope. The one that you see in the picture is a modern-day model, an SX40A. An electron microscope can magnify objects up to 1 million times and can view something down to 10 angstroms, or the diameter of a single atom. The invention of the electron microscope led to a fascinating discovery in the 1950s. That fascinating discovery that the invention of the electron microscope led to was made by Dr. Francis Crick along with Sir James Watson, who are credited with the discovery of DNA, that double helix building block of life that forms like two twisted circular stairways in each of the several trillion cells of a person's body. And Dr. Francis Crick won the Nobel Prize for that discovery. If you would uncoil one DNA structure from one cell and stretch it out, it would be approximately 7 feet long. And all of the DNA in just one human body linked together and stretched out would reach to the moon and back. If you were to type out the DNA code information in your body, the books would be 4,000 volumes per cell times at least 30 trillion cells and would fill the Grand Canyon 50 times over. Now, my friend, that takes an omniscient designer to create and not an unexplainable Big Bang theory. Much of who we are and how we are physically depends on deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. Each DNA molecule has 46 chromosomes, 23 from your mom and 23 from your dad. And each chromosome is a wadded-up strand of DNA with about 3 billion base pairs. Dr. Francis Crick, who won that Nobel Prize for the discovery of DNA, decided to ascertain the probabilities of such a complex molecule coming into existence by the law of chance, which governs evolutionary theory. His conclusion was 0.0%. Crick said, and I quote, "An honest man armed with all the knowledge available to us now could only state that in some sense the origin of life appears at the moment to be a miracle. Despite more than 75 years of teaching that life came into being through evolution, Crick said that it could never happen ever." Sir Fred Hoyle, who was professor at Cambridge and one of the leading astronomers and scientists of our time, decided to test the laws of probability even further. He wanted to find out the probability of just one cell, not just one strand of DNA, coming into existence by chance. And Hoyle worked with another mathematician and astrophysicist named Chandra Wicks-Ramage to calculate the probabilities. These two great mathematical minds came up with this number of years for just one simple cell to come into existence by chance. 10 to the 40,000th power in years. One noted Swiss mathematician, Lecomte de Noy, said that any number in which the probabilities were greater than 10 to the 50th power would simply never happen, even cosmically. If we counted all the electrons in the universe, the thing that we have the most of, the number of electrons would come to 10 to the 52nd power. That would be counting every electron in every planet, in every sun, in every galaxy. Wicks-Ramage states, living systems could not have been generated by random processes within a finite time scale in a finite universe. Hoyle and Wick, in fact, rejected evolution as the source of life. Instead, they said that for any kind of life to exist anywhere in the universe, it must be there, quote, by the hand of an eternally existent being of infinite power, which, if you desire to, you may call God. Hoyle, once an atheist, became a believer in God. The DNA code is actually a universal code, whether it be for rats, bats, or humans. Therefore, all forms of life came from the same software maker, like Microsoft, which I choose to call God. In human cells, there are markers or lipoproteins called HLA, or human leukocyte antigens, found in the number 6 chromosome, and human leukocyte antigens are only on number 6 chromosome in humans. Number 17 for a mouse, for example. 6 is also the number of man and the day of his creation. And the human leukocyte antigens are what make us different from other forms of creation. Different arrangements of human leukocyte antigen account for our different blood types. Our bodies consist of 17 base elements that are the same elements found in the dust of the earth. The Bible in Genesis 2:7 says that is exactly what we were made from. That's not coincidence. Although at the time that Charles Darwin wrote his Origin of the Species, he had no idea of even the existence of DNA, he did make this rather revealing statement that is now being amplified in many parts of the scientific community. He said, and I quote, "I have asked myself whether I may not have devoted my life to a fantasy. I am ready to cry with vexation at my blindness and presumption." That's found Charles Darwin, page 59 of Herbert Wendt's book, From Ape to Man, copyright 1972. Leading scientists in almost every discipline are beginning to embrace the reality that all life on Earth is wonderfully and fearfully made, with specific design elements that cannot be attributed to anything but a creator of unimaginable intelligence. And I say that creator is God himself. And that is the case for creation. Thank you very much for your time. God bless.